that is for our discussion today on our second UU principle of compassion, equity, and justice as we commit to lean on one another and help each other. It's so great to see you this morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Palm Beaches. I am Dan Lambert, and I serve this congregation as the part-time ministerial leader. I am very glad to see everyone here today. It's a wonderful day to gather together in fellowship. I'd like to start out. We've got a few announcements that a few folks would like to make. There's a microphone. Let's start with Lynn, and then Pat and Henry have an announcement. We don't have to go in that order. There's nothing magical about it. Just like making Barbara walk around the room back and forth.
And I just should have kept my mind. This Saturday, February 3rd, I will be leading a tour at Mounts Botanical Garden. I'm a docent there, and right now is a wonderful time to come to the garden because we have an exhibit called Washed Ashore, Art to Save the Sea. It's a collection of sculptures that were made from items that were washed up on the beaches in Oregon. And it's a beautiful and disturbing at the same time. It's a fantastic exhibit. If you have not been to the garden, or if you haven't been to Mounts in a while, it is just a sort of a hidden treasure in Palm Beach County. We will meet at 10:30 inside the front gate. You're just going to pay your regular admission, which right now, because of the exhibit, is $15. But we're sort of a non-sanctioned sanctioned tour, and look forward to everybody joining us. If you have any questions, please see me later.
Okay, thank you. I love art that repurposes old things or otherwise junk that wind up in a landfill, so that's a great idea.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are y'all? You notice that little southern accent, which I really don't have? I am inviting you all to party. We're having a Mardi Gras. It's not New Orleans, but we try. It's going to be Saturday the 10th. It starts at 6. We'll have Creole food that won't burn your mouth. We'll have drinks, the kind that really are tasty and beveragey and have alcohol in them. And lots of fun. So please, we'd love to have you come. If you want to come, it's $30, and please see that it's paid in the office with your reservation by the 5th. And see you all there.
Thank you, Pat. Henry?
Morning. A couple of weeks ago, Reverend Dan forwarded me an email that he received from Roy Zimmerman. Now, Roy Zimmerman is an entertainer, comedian, musician, and he plays at comedy clubs and UU churches across the country. We have reserved the night of Monday, March 12th. Now, it's a Monday night, it's in March, and we would have him here. We would have a party in Ministers Hall following it to meet the performer. I got caught in doing due diligence. I went on YouTube and started watching his videos. He is funny, and he's very, very talented. It would cost about $20. We haven't worked out the details, but I'd like a show of hands from you, a serious show of hands, if you would seriously attend. I don't know if you seriously attend the comic performance, but I would like to know, because I don't want to do this if he's not going to get a good audience, and we're not going to have a good audience here. So how many of you, by a show of hands, would attend? I think I'll go through with it then. Having said that, if you can help me in any way, especially with publicity and or with the event itself, please see me at Ministers Hall after the service. In addition, this coming Friday is the first Friday of the month, and we will have a First Friday movie. The movie is Barty. Since this is Academy Award time, I chose Barty because it's the winner of 4 Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Writer. So it's got the major awards from 1956, and it is a spectacularly beautiful, sensitive movie. I have food slips. For those who are new, I give out food slips to everyone so that we have a balanced meal before the movie. Starts at Friday at 6 o'clock. Please see me after the service for the Roy Zimmerman event and for taking a slip for the first Friday film.
What date is the Roy Zimmerman event again?
March 12th.
Thank you. I'm really excited about Roy Zimmerman coming. It's good to sit and laugh with each other, but sometimes it's also important for us to laugh at ourselves, which is part of what he does. There's a lot of things that we can laugh at with fellow UUs. If you just look around the room, you can see there's plenty of good material to laugh at. You're all looking at me. I know. I heard that. Let's light our chalice flame. I've asked Marty to come and be our flame lighter today, and as we do that, we're going to sing a Come Come Whoever You Are. Let's do that through twice. It's 188 in your hymnal if you need it. We'd like to give you an opportunity, if you so wish, to stand and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're coming from and what brought you to us this morning. Barbara has a microphone that she'll bring to you, so if you're a first-time visitor or you haven't been here a while and you'd like to say hi to us, we would love to say hi to you. Please stand and allow us to say hi to you.
Hello, it's great to be here. My name is Anita Arver, and I'm visiting Bob and Lynn Tomlinson. I'm from Canada, Ontario.
Welcome. Applause for the Canadians.
Hi, I'm Mary Widener from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we've never been here, but we go to First Unitarian and in Pittsburgh, so yeah, it seems familiar already.
Just because we're confused.
Mary and Jim.
My name is Joanne Collins, and my husband Dick and myself go to the UU Church in Port Charlotte. We're visiting our dear friend Jeannie, who is presently living in Jupiter. So we wanted her to experience a UU.
Wow, great. Welcome.
Speaking of wandering and no despair, that's Dennis Monti from the Farmington Universalist Unitarian Church, where I've been a member for perhaps 40 years. I'm visiting Cheryl Sarkozy, who's not a member, but should be, really. And you should get to know her because everything about her, her values, etc., are totally consistent with what we represent.
Wonderful.
I will be available as a house guest this week if anybody needs
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Sarkozy, and I live in Palm Beach Gardens. And that's it.
Great. Welcome. We're really glad to have you here.
I'm Jay Wolin, visiting from Davenport, Iowa, visiting with my brother Harry.
Welcome, Jay.
Hi, I'm Joe Zawilski, escaping the north, down here from, a member of the UU Church of Worcester. From Massachusetts.
Wonderful, welcome. Yeah, folks from all over this morning. Great.
Hi, I'm Eleanor D'Amato, and I belong to Channing Memorial Unitarian Universalist Church in beautiful Newport, Rhode Island. And I'm down here with my husband, who refuses to attend. But I've been coming for 3 weeks now, and I love this church, and I love your music, and I love the sermons that I hear here, and I have met so many lovely people. So I'll be coming for the rest of our vacation.
Oh, great. Now you're in charge of our marketing committee. Fantastic. Is that everyone? Well, thank you so much, everybody, for standing up to say hi. I know that's always a challenging time, especially for introverts, but it's really great for us to get to know who you are and for us to have an opportunity to welcome you. At the end of the service, we have a fellowship time in Ministers Hall, which is behind us in the other building on the other side of the parking lot. And we'd love for you to join us there and have some coffee and some snacks and just sit and chat for a little bit. So please stick around and let us get to know you a little bit more. Let's go into our affirmation, the words of which are also found in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth of love, and to help one another. Let's stand now and join in hymn number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Number 126, please stand. Now we enter into our time of silent meditation and candle lighting. For those of you who are visitors, we have a table over here to your right, my left, where we welcome you to come and light a candle in honor of someone, in memory of someone, as a notice, a plea to the light, to guide us, to bring us strength and comfort in many of life's challenges. We'll have a moment of silence, and after a minute or so, Kaylin will play, and when the music starts, you're welcome to come and light a candle in your own time. So please, let's have a moment of silence. begin the message this morning, I want to just give a couple minutes of an update on Tess. Many of you ask and send emails on a regular basis asking how she's doing. For the visitors, my wife underwent a pancreas transplant a month ago today, as a matter of fact. And she's been home from the hospital about 3 weeks now. And her recovery is going very well. Physically, each day she gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Emotionally, because there's so much that goes on in your body when you go through something like that. There's all kinds of ups and downs. And if you know us at all, you know that we're very social creatures. We like to go out to dinner with friends and get out of the house and explore and have fun adventures. And we've been able to do none of that for a month. And I think that she's getting really stir crazy and really tired of being with me all the time. We have a couple of doctor's appointments each week. We go to Pompano Beach to do a lab draw once a week and go to Miami for a series of doctor's appointments once a week. And so she sees the medical professionals and some of the other patients there, but it's not like socializing. Friday, she decided that she wanted to get out of the house, and we had a crazy, awesome adventure to Trader Joe's. And so she has to put on a surgical mask and a little protective clothing and wear gloves to touch things in the store because her immunization system is so compromised. She's on anti-rejection medications for the rest of her life. And so learning what that means has been an interesting challenge. And we know that it'll get better over time. The doctors have said the first 6 months are the most critical. She's been able to have a couple of visitors, and that's something that we want to increase slowly over the next few weeks because really she does need someone other than me to entertain her all the time. And I can only be so funny for so long. I have my limits. Usually it's 25 minutes on Sunday morning and then I'm totally done. This afternoon I'll be absolutely worthless. But thank you so much for your care, for your concern, many cards that you've sent, which she dearly appreciates. And it's great to be part of such a wonderful fellowship, to have a village to depend on at times like this. It means a lot to both of us. So she's doing very well. We're not sure when she'll be able to show up here because the worst thing she can do is to be in a group of people where there's lots of germs. I'm not saying that you're dirty, but even when we try to be clean, especially with the flu season the way it is, it's just not worth the risk right now. She'll be back at some point, and we're very excited for that day when it comes, because she doesn't miss being here. She misses hanging out with all of you. So thank you for your continued concerns for her. It's interesting in our experience over the past month, thinking about the people that we've met and encountered through the transplant, the hospital, and the doctor's visits, as it relates to this second principle. There are 7 principles for Unitarian Universalism that we cling to, that, as Larry explained last week, that we covenant with. And the second one says justice, equality, and compassion in human relations. And part of what that means is treating everyone as a human being. It's basically the golden rule. Treating everyone the way that you want to be treated. And in every culture and every religion that's ever been discovered, there's some version of the golden rule. This is one of the ways that, as UUs, we express that particular idea. I talked a couple weeks ago about the donor of Tess's pancreas, a young black lesbian woman from inner city Richmond, Virginia, by the name of Neek. We wonder how her life was and how people were living out the golden rule in her community, how she was experiencing compassion, equality, and justice in her life. The night that Tess got her pancreas transplant, she was in ICU post-op, and it was a unit with 4 patients in it, each in a different room, but because of the way it was constructed, the walls didn't go all the way up to the ceiling, and you could hear and see everything that was going on. And in the bed, catty corner from Tess's, there was a young woman of about 40 who had a kidney transplant a few weeks ago, and for whatever reason, her body was rejecting that kidney. She didn't managed to get good enough care to deal with that. She got an infection. The infection wound up going through all of her organs, and she died while we were there. It was a terrible experience to hear the doctors and the nurses try to deal with. Her family, mother, sisters, friends were there in mourning. And again, we wonder, had she been a different person, would she gotten different care? The interesting thing about the Miami Transplant Institute, which is part of the Jackson Health System down in Miami, is that almost all of the medical professionals, from the surgeons on the transplant team to the nurses in surgery, the nurses on the floor, the physicians, and even the people now that we deal with post-op, almost all of them are immigrants. If you're familiar with Miami, that doesn't surprise you at all. The head surgeon is Brazilian. Another one of the surgeons is from Costa Rica. Her head follow-up physician, who was part of the surgery team, is Cuban. Most of the nurses are from the Caribbean in one way or another, an awful lot of Haitian nurses. They all give wonderful, wonderful care. And so when we think about some of the issues that we face, issues of healthcare justice are really important. And it made us think about the fact that because we have so many immigrants who are part of the healthcare team in Miami, are people there getting more equitable care because of the ethnic makeup and the racial makeup of the medical professionals in Miami compared to maybe a city or a hospital where you would not see so much diversity? It's hard to answer that question, never having been through that experience anywhere else, but it definitely makes me wonder. Again, the principle that we're talking about this morning is justice, equality, and compassion in human relations. And I actually want to talk about that in reverse this morning because they build on each other, I believe, in reverse order. You cannot have justice without committing to equity and equality. You cannot have equality without having compassion. And so we're going to talk about them in reverse order. Let's start by talking about compassion. What does it mean to be compassionate, to have compassion? Compassion is an emotional response to someone who is often in a challenging situation. It can be physical, emotional, can be in lots of different areas of life. And we see or we encounter or we talk to someone who's having a challenge in some way, and there's something inside of us that goes, this isn't right. I feel bad for this person. We can spend some time splitting hairs between the terms compassion or empathy or sympathy or pity or lots of different things, and I don't really want to take time to do that here. I really would like to encourage us, for the purpose of our discussion this morning, to put them all in the same category. Whenever you have an emotional response to someone who's having any kind of life struggle, I believe it fits into the principle of this idea of compassion. And it motivates us to want to help in some way. I've gotten to know enough of you to know that we have a lot of helpers in this congregation. We have a lot of problem solvers. People who say, this isn't right, I want to do something about it, or I want to help do something about it, or we need to change this from what it is to what it ought to be. That is the building block of compassion. It's the idea that someone is in a situation that is causing them a problem, and we want to help them get out of that or to make that situation better. That emotion of compassion then drives us to want to create equality where we see inequality. Equality is the state of being equal, of everyone or everything being the same, especially when it comes to rights, opportunities, and laws. Typically, especially as children, we learn this idea as fairness. Think about little kids playing a game. Something happens and they go, oh, that's not fair. Come on, be fair. Mom, he's not being fair. Or in school, hey, that's not fair. And what it means is we have a perception that someone else is being treated differently than I'm being treated. Someone else has an advantage that I don't have. Someone else isn't playing by the rules that I have to play by. And this is something that gets instilled in us as we grow. Now, hopefully, as we mature, it's not so much about life being fair to me as it is about me being concerned that life is fair to everyone. And so this concept of equality is one that brings us to the idea of equal rights. Over the decades that we've been alive, we've heard a lot about racial justice, racial equality. And we hear people talk about the idea that we really want a society that is colorblind, that doesn't see or pay attention to color or to race. I've often had a problem with that idea. I don't think that's our ultimate goal. Because what happens, at least today, in our culture, if we say we want to treat everyone the same, it doesn't recognize the fact that some of us start at a different point than others do. We all don't have the same advantage. And really what white people mean when they say that we all ought to be colorblind is that I want to pretend like the rest of you don't have inequality or injustice in your life. I want to pretend like everybody else has the same privilege and the same starting point that I do. I recognize the fact that I am a straight, white, middle-aged male. It is really hard to get more privilege than that in America. And that means that I have to be extra aware of the challenges that everyone else has in our culture. Over the past several years, I've had conversations with people about issues like affirmative action, for example. And I've had a lot of my straight, white, middle-aged male friends say that they feel like they're now being the target of reverse discrimination because everyone else has advantages that they no longer have. And my response is, oh, that's so bad. Literally, for centuries, we as white men have had all the privilege. And only when we've decided to share it does anybody else have any type of equality or fairness or justice in their life. And we are now living in an age where people are demanding their rights, they're demanding equality, they're demanding justice, and they're being heard, partly because of where we are with social media and the internet. There are many, many outlets now. But over the past few months, with the Me Too movement and so many women and even a lot of men coming forward to talk about how they've been sexually abused by people like me, people in power, we're now seeing a cultural shift. And we're seeing some of these white men in power saying, hey, wait a minute, what about my due process? What about the presumption of innocence until proven guilty? Well, that's super convenient because in our courts, when it comes to sexual assault, it's usually two people in private, and it's simply her word against his. Due process doesn't fit in those situations. I think we need to start by believing and then work from there. And you know what? Honestly, it means that some people are going to be wrongly accused. But for all of those folks who have been ignored, who have suffered at the hands of sexual abusers for so long, if we have a few middle-aged, straight white men who have to suffer with false accusations, I don't think that's an unfair price to pay to help bring our culture into alignment with where it ought to be. So that we have men and women of all ages and all colors and all races and all backgrounds who feel like our society truly wants to build a just society that everyone's voice matters in, where everyone has a place, and where no one feels like they're victimized simply because of their race, because of their gender, because of their sexual orientation, or anything else. If you look in the order of service, on the one side of this lilac-colored sheet, there's a graphic that many of you probably have seen over the past few years. It's made its round on the internet a few times. Equality doesn't mean justice. In this graphic, what we have here are 3 people trying to watch a baseball game, but they're in the outfield on the other side of a solid wooden fence. And in order for them to see, somehow they find in the left-hand image 3 boxes that are exactly the same. So they stand on these 3 boxes, and we see the tallest person can now see, the middle person can peek over the top, but the shortest person still can't see. This is the problem with seeking only equality in our culture. Equality means we treat everybody the same. All right, you 3 dudes want to watch the baseball game, but you can't. Let me get 3 boxes that are identically the same so that you're all treated the same. Here you go. It doesn't work for the shortest person. Justice dictates that we find a way for everyone to be able to peek over the outfield fence and watch the baseball game. Equality is not the same as justice. Equality is not the end goal. Justice is the end goal. This illustrates in a lot of really important ways what justice is all about and the difference between equality and justice. Now, I've seen some critiques on the internet of this graphic saying if it was really true justice, you would tear down the fence so that you wouldn't have to have somebody up who boosted up. Again, I think that's splitting hairs. You're at a baseball game. Baseball games require an outfield fence. And so the graphic isn't about the fence. The graphic is about 3 people of different heights wanting to watch a darn baseball game. So don't overthink it too much. But I believe it's a really good illustration of what we talk about when we try to figure out the difference between equality and justice. Also, we can talk about what we call lady justice in America. You know the symbol of our court system? It's a woman holding a scale, wearing a blindfold, and the scale is even. And the idea is that when the scales are on both sides and Lady Justice is blind, she can't see, then everything should be okay. Everyone is treated the same. The problem is we know in America that's not how our justice system works. Instead of a truly blind judge or justice system, we have something like this, where the judge and the juries are peeking between their fingers to see who they're judging, and often their decisions are impacted by who they see, by the socioeconomic status of people, by the color of their skin, by their background. Roughly 6%, here's just one way to illustrate this with the justice system. Roughly 6% of the United States population comprises of black males. Roughly 6%. About 38% of the United States inmates in federal and state prisons are black males. Let me say that again. Roughly 6% of America is comprised of black males. 38% of inmates in state and federal prisons are black males. That is 6.5 times the population percentage of black males that are in our prisons. I don't know how anybody can look at that statistic and say that our justice system is blind, that it treats everyone equally. This past week, if you follow the news, you probably noticed the story about Dr. Nassar, the United States gymnastics physician who worked at Michigan State University, who pled guilty to, first of all, child pornography charges, and then secondly, charges of sexual impropriety in examinations with hundreds of young, underage female gymnasts over the past 20-plus years. One of the things that made the news was the judge in that case. As she was doing the sentencing, she made a lot of statements that if you're a lawyer, probably made you step back and gasp. Because she clearly was not blind. She clearly was not representing a judge with no bias. She was very much biased and disgusted with him. I would hope that any human being would be disgusted with someone like that. And what she said, none of us can really disagree with. The issue is that she's wearing the judge's robe and she's sitting on the bench. And the judge is supposed to be impartial when it comes to running a trial and meting out a sentence. And so some people are saying she should not have done that because she's supposed to be impartial and she's now laid the groundwork for an appeal. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I, for one, was glad to see a judge speak her mind and really come out and say what so many of us have been thinking, and recognize the fact that she is not a cold-hearted human being who has no emotions, even though she's wearing a robe and sitting on the bench. She has thoughts, and these thoughts came out, and I believe she was the judge that these young girls needed to defend them and to support them. And if there's an appeal, this Dr. Nasser pled guilty. So it's not like there's going to be another trial that's going to determine his guilt or innocence. There may be another sentencing phase or something like that. But the fact is, justice, the American justice system is not blind. The numbers, the demographics of people in our prisons indicate the fact that it is not blind. And to pretend otherwise is not helpful. Let's talk about affirmative action. One way that this country decided to help create a bit more of an even playing field in hiring practices and in college admissions, as well as in a few other aspects of our culture. I remember when this was being implemented, I was much younger, thinking about graduate school myself, and a lot of conversations with people saying, you know, you're going to have a less qualified minority who's going to get that admission spot in grad school that really should go to you because you're more qualified. And at the time, I definitely was shaking my head saying, yeah, that's definitely not fair. But the older I get, the more I learn about systematic injustice, systematic inequalities, I think about issues such as the fact that these minorities grew up in areas where they didn't have an even shake, where their schools weren't funded the same as my school was funded, where the quality of safety and security where they grew up was not the same as the safety and security where I grew up. And that affirmative action, while it may have seemed unfair to me, was a way to give these folks a hand up, to give them a chance to succeed in life, where otherwise they had been oppressed. Otherwise they had faced inequality and injustice in most cases, in many steps along the way. And now we have an awful lot of universities who have said, you know, we've done a good job with affirmative action, we're now doing away with that. We've got a student population that more accurately reflects our culture and our society. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's bad if we say affirmative action has accomplished its goal and we don't need it anymore, because there's clearly a lot more work that needs to be done in various segments of our society. But affirmative action is one way that we try to bring justice to a culture moreover than equality. It helps people stand on that taller box that they need to see over that center field fence, rather than giving everyone the same size box. We also have talked quite a bit in our congregation about helping the kids impacted by DACA. We've talked a little bit about those impacted by temporary protective status, not knowing what's going to happen over the next few weeks, especially with the DACA provisions. Being a sanctuary congregation is a matter of human justice. It's not a matter of equality, but it builds out of compassion for people who have called America home for 20 years, who have gotten an education in our American public school systems, who have gone to college, who have started businesses, who know only the United States as home. We have compassion with the idea that they may be deported to a country that they don't know, to a language they're not familiar with, to people that they have never met, trying to find housing and a job that may be totally unavailable in a still developing nation. We feel compassion for them, and we want them to have the same opportunities as the rest of us. But if we treat them the same, that's not enough. Justice requires that we give them opportunities over and above what we might give someone else. That's why the idea of being a sanctuary congregation is so important. If those folks begin to be deported and we can help some of them be safe for a few days while we help them figure out their legal status and find out what their opportunities and options are, that is a just thing for us to do as a congregation. Our liberal religion requires us to act like that. We've often heard, as part of UU sermons or meetings or social justice gatherings, we've heard for years in various circles the quote that's attributed to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Does that sound familiar? The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This quote is not original with Dr. King. This quote actually comes from a 19th century minister by the name of Theodore Parker from an 1853 sermon. Theodore Parker was a Unitarian. This quote is part of the sermon where he's talking about his work as a slavery abolitionist, where he's talking about the idea that he can't see the entire arc of the moral universe, and he doesn't understand where it begins and where it ends. But that he knows through the work that the activists are doing that that arc will bend towards justice. Often that MLK quote is seen as a passive way to understand that inevitably the arc of history will bend towards justice. If you've studied human history at all, you know that that's not inevitable. You know that that's not true. You know that good people, people who demand justice, have to stand up and make justice happen for that arc to bend towards justice. Parker, by the way, was also quoted by Abraham Lincoln in a little speech called the Gettysburg Address. His phrase, "a government of the people, for the people, by the people," that was Parker's quote that he took. And when Obama was president, he had a new rug made for the office, and it has 5 historical quotes on it. These are 2 of the quotes that come from Thomas Parker, a Unitarian minister from the 1800s. Little fun fact, no extra charge. So when we think about our roles in compassion, equality, and justice, we have to think about them from a few different angles. First of all, as Unitarian Universalists, we think about our history, we think about our liberal religion, we think about our covenant with our fellow humans. Wherever we see inequality, wherever we see injustice, we are called, because of our faith, because of our compassion, to act, to stand in the gap for those who are marginalized, to help with a helping hand to those who are, for whatever reason, not able to help themselves to the point they want to be in that moment. I also think that we need to look at our demographics. As whites, we are born with a lot of privilege in America. So we need to think about how we use that privilege to help minorities establish the kind of life, education, career that they want to have, without us standing up beside them and demanding laws and systems that treat everyone more fairly. Then we are continuing generations and centuries of white privilege. As a male, I have to understand my role in not just women's equality, but women's justice. I'm a feminist. I raised 2 redheaded daughters, and if you have raised redheads, you know there's a strong will that goes along with that redheadism. That strong will can be used negatively or positively. Fortunately, my 2 daughters are amazing, wonderful, terrific women who demand justice for those around them, who have spoken out and demonstrated and been a part of some pretty amazing movements in their fairly young lives. And their career trajectories are reflecting that, and I'm super proud of them. I intentionally, with their mother, raised them to be strong, intelligent women who would demand equal treatment and who would demand justice for those around them, because that was the right thing to do. As a male, I have to be aware of my privilege and how even unintentionally I speak to women or treat women or behave in a way around women that makes them think they are less than me, or that makes them think that I think they are less than me. And that takes a lot of work, because it's so ingrained in us as American men. The strong, macho, John Wayne, Clint Eastwood model of American machoism is not healthy. And that's going to take a lot of work to change that image. And simply as humans, it's our responsibility to treat others the way we want to be treated, to live out the golden rule in our life. And as we do that, we know that that golden rule will guide us and lead us to the second UU principle of compassion, equality, and justice in all human relationships. So compassion helps us realize that life isn't fair for many and helps motivate us to do something to help. Equality drives us to want to level the playing field for everyone. And justice requires us to understand that equality often isn't enough, and that some people need what the majority often sees as an unfair advantage, at least for a while. As UUs, our liberal religion motivates us to feel compassion to those in challenging situations, to require equality in social systems, and to fight for justice alongside of and on behalf of every human being. Amen. Next week, we're going to take a look at the third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation as we continue to work through our 7 UU principles. Afterwards, when we gather in Ministers Hall, I'll be sitting at a table and we can have a Ministers Talkback session if you'd like to chat a little bit about this idea and just kind of batter some ideas back and forth. Talk about what we're doing in our congregation and in our local area here to help live out this second principle. Let's all stand together and sing hymn number 315, This Old World, if you would please. Hymn 315. offering to help take care of the expenses we incur in the everyday operation of our congregation, and to help many of the organizations in the area that are aligned with our principles and our goals. As we take the offering this morning, we invite you to participate not just with your financial donations, but we also collect goods for a local organization each week, and many folks bring in all types of donations that they put in the baskets before the service and also during this time. So will the ushers please collect the offering at this time. It's one of my favorite songs, so thank you so much to the band for playing it. As we distinguish the chalice flame, please, in unison, recite the words that you see in the order of service. We extinguish this flame upon the light of truth, to warm the community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts, the glory of our federation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and again, another reminder to please join us in Ministers Hall after the post. Thank you so much for being here.
Free. Season